Hi, and welcome to another episode of White and Woke at Work. I'm Janelle Benjamin, your host, and I'm here today with Sara Herrmann, a technical, I was going to say recruiter. No.
Account manager. I'm in sales. I'm a technical account manager. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry, Janelle.
From San Diego. Welcome to the show. How are you, Sara?
I'm doing all right. It's great to be here. I'm a little nervous, but this will be fun.
This is going to be a piece of cake. I'm just going to ask everybody that's watching just to remember to hit the like button below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And here we go, Sara. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Sara. You are what did you just say? A technical, I keep saying recruiter. What's wrong? Account manager, a technical account manager.
It's kind of a weird title. Yeah, so it's a sales role for scientists, essentially. I sell preclinical, mostly research models into mostly academic accounts, but also, biotechs or anyone who's doing that kind of like preclinical, before it goes into humans research. So, it's a technical role, but it's a sales role essentially. But, yeah.
So
I have a degree in biology. I have a master's in bioscience business, and I worked for a long time in quality assurance. And then I just I wanted to do something that was a little bit more person to person than quality assurance. So I went into sales. It's been quite a journey. It's not easy all the time, but it's been fun.
Yeah. What was your office environment like pre-COVID?
Well, I worked from home, so my office environment was sort of the same as what you see here. I was just kind of working from my computer and, maybe go to visit a client every once in a while.
So you wouldn't really see or hear about like the workplace challenges that are taking place for historically.
Not really. No? Not really. So not in this job. I mean, before I had a job at a huge genetic sequencing company in San Diego called Illumina. I'm sure, anyone who's familiar with genome sequencing is familiar with Illumina. But I worked in the office there and also for a startup in two very, very different communities. And is certainly different than working by yourself and, collaborating remotely with people. But to be honest, it really prepared me for this kind of, remote environment that we're in now.
How so? How did it prepare you?
I mean, I had to do it before, I got to see people every once in a while, but for the most part, it was just me and my computer and, talking to people, on the phone or, we would do a video conference here and there. Obviously, it's become a lot more commonplace, which is just so great. I don't know. It's really helped me to connect with people that I don't think I would have normally. My family has a weekly Zoom call and like we didn't talk weekly, I would see them twice a year, but
I love that.
Now it's so great, right? Have you had anything like that where you're connecting with people that you might not have? Honestly, besides this, obviously.
Well, yeah, no, honestly, I think that, it's hard to say because COVID is like running rampant and it's deadly. But at the same time, it has given me such an opportunity to connect with people from all over the world that I would not normally have even met, people like yourself. I absolutely love the fact that we're all forced to be at home, that we get to spend a lot more time with our families and that we connect with people. Like I've had Zoom birthday parties and I've had like milestone birthday parties for both my parents. My mom turned 65, my dad turned 70, and we did like massive parties over Zoom for both of them with all their friends from childhood. So it's been an amazing opportunity to connect. Yeah, that's so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more, I guess, then about, how you relate to what's happening in the world right now in terms of the social justice movement. When you've been indoors for a very long time, you don't have the kind of workplace contention and issues or you haven't experienced it or seen it because of your environment. So how do you relate to what's happening?
Yeah, you probably found me on LinkedIn. That's where I've been sort of most active in sort of the anti-racist community. And I think like many people, I've been aware of racism for a very, very long time, but I hadn't been really aware, if you know what I mean. Being white, we're very insulated from any kind of racism. It's so easy to not to see it and maybe think about it, or to see it and not process it, or stuff like that. But this summer with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, you know, we just all, it's been at the forefront, and there's nothing else to do. You know, we can't go and like drown our sorrows. I think that maybe, you know, it wouldn't have been the same if it hadn't happened during COVID. So it's interesting, but that you know, I had been exposed to these ideas previously, but it was really a wake up call for me, and I think for a lot of other people. I've heard that, you know, on this podcast or video series or interviews with other people, but you know, it showed me that I'm not okay with the way that things are, and I don't want to just sit on my hands and not do anything, because that makes me part of the problem.
So what are some of the things that you are able to do? Because we're all shut in. Not to diminish it by any means, because there's a million things that you can do. I, for one, have started my own consulting business. But what are some of the things you are taking action to do?
Yeah, I mean, so it's slow, right? Like I'm not going out and, you know, shaking people and changing their minds or anything. It's a very slow process, and I think for a lot of white people, it needs to start with us educating ourselves. You know, we can't come and do any of this work without the baseline knowledge of what Black people are telling us. You know, if I come and I try to like steamroll with my white ideas, that's not going to do any good, and that's not what I want to do. So it's been really listening to Black voices and listening to understand, as opposed to listening to respond, I think. You know, and I'm sure a lot of other white people have had the experience where they listen and they don't like what they hear. And it's so easy to, you know, listen, not like what you hear, and then reject it and just stop listening. And that's not good either. You know, we hear things about, you know, white fragility. That's something that, you know, really resonates with me. I feel that, you know, and recently I'm still learning. I have to continuously learn, but this concept of white woman tears being weaponized against Black people was completely new to me, and just a horrifying thing. You know, just so many people, everyone in that thread was like, yes, I've experienced that. So learning, first of all, is important, I think, to me. But as far as action goes, you know, beyond that, it's, as a white person, I think we have this power that, first of all, people aren't racist to us, so we don't have any of that latent exhaustion that I can only imagine. You know, it's exhausting sometimes to just see it, even if it's not directed at us. So I think, you know, white people have this power of being white, not being exhausted by racism already, and also being able to talk to other white people. You know, maybe it's best if Black people do that because they have those personal experiences, but it's not really fair, I think, to ask Black people to go have a civil conversation with a Nazi to, like, you know, explain to them the error of their ways in a patient and kind and empathetic way. And you know, they might be more likely to listen if it's coming from a white person. You know, they don't feel as attacked maybe, or they feel like the person might understand them a little bit better. And I you know, that's the kind of work that I want to do. It's so easy to see racism and like lash out and hate those people, but that's not how my mind was changed. You know, I haven't always been this person. You know, I didn't understand what like a microaggression was or any of that stuff, you know, and it took a lot of patient effort with me to sort of get me to long-term come around to someone who's more interested in listening than shutting my ears, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. I only smiled and laughed a little bit because you mentioned, you know, not having to go and educate the Nazis, but I feel like for the most part, we spend our time not dealing with Nazis in society. Like, I don't believe like the majority of white people are just walking around as Nazis, right? Like the majority are just people like yourself who perhaps they just didn't know what they didn't know. It's different when you're in racialized skin. And so you have these experiences that educate you, right? It's like a lifelong process that people are just now waking up to. So, you know, it can't be this like overnight transformation, this, aha, I get it. And, you know, now I know exactly all about it. So there's definitely a lot of learning and unlearning that has to be done. So I commend you for doing that. That is awesome. And then, you know, just taking that, like you said, and I do believe that there's a lot of benefit in other white people to share and to communicate and to talk, because again, I shouldn't have an experience where I'm gaslit, or, you know, my experiences are minimized or discounted because, oh no, you're just playing the race card. Like those interactions are like, here we go again, they're harmful. I find myself getting worked up, angry, yelling, blah, blah, blah. I try to be patient, or sometimes I just leave them. I don't address them at all because I'm like, this is energy sucking. So if you can have those conversations with people that look like you, and that's part of the reason I did this show, to have people who can see themselves in a variety of white faces, from old to young, and male and female, and everything in between. We've got a transgender guest, right? I just want everybody to be able to see themselves reflected and say, aha, I can do this, right? If they can learn and interact and wake up, I can as well. So I commend you for doing that. Tell me a little bit, I guess, then about your upbringing, like your family life, and are any of them like woke or waking up, or the things that, what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so incredibly lucky. You know, I grew up in the Bay Area, so very diverse, but not a lot of Black people. So it was sort of an interesting, you know, we didn't really think about anti-Black racism. You know, maybe we thought about like racism against Latinos or Latinas or some stuff like that. You know, that we were exposed to some of that, but not necessarily anti-Black racism. But you know, my dad was the guy who would wave his vote sign, or he sometimes would stand on a corner with a sign that just said peace. Like, just, you know, both of my parents were just incredibly strong, and they understood that racism is bad and always taught us those things. But you know, even growing up in the Bay Area and with parents that are smart and kind and caring, you know, I still was molded by white supremacy. I think that's something that, you know, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in America and probably elsewhere, I can't really speak to overseas, but it's just built into our culture.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that you can't necessarily escape. And it's something that, you know, we really have to combat with our kids early on. And I think my parents did a decent job. You know, my church did a good job. We had a lot of diversity there. You know, I was raised as a Unitarian Universalist, and it's maybe a little bit of a different church. You know, we had a lot of people of different races, different religions, all sort of coming together, and they were all accepted. So, but even with all of those great inputs, you know, I was still a victim of the system of white supremacy and internalized a lot of it. And I think that's important to sort of recognize as we start doing this work, is that, you know, no matter who you are, you have these internal biases and you have to address them. Otherwise they'll, you know, kind of rule your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, my parents were great. My grandparents, my grandpa worked for the CDC in Atlanta, and, you know, they remember back when there was a cross burning on Stone Mountain. So, you know, like, this history isn't that old, you know, even the like really gross KKK, you know, Klansmen burning crosses on Stone Mountain. That's not that old. Like, that's not that long ago. We've come far, but we have a long way to go still. And yeah, I don't know. Hope that answers your question.
No, it does. It absolutely does. I'm just curious because you raised, you know, some internalization of white supremacy. Like, what are some of the ways that you recognize now what you might have internalized?
Oh man, I mean, here's an example that's just so gross and embarrassing from early in my childhood. I remember, you know, we were getting a doll or something. I was very, very little, and we're picking out a doll, and there was a dark Cabbage Patch Kid doll or something that, you know, mom was trying to buy for me, and I was like, oh no, I don't want that one. She's not pretty because she's not pink.
Okay.
And just, it's so painful to say and think back to. And that's not something that my mom taught me. And she was, you know, obviously horrified, but I had picked that up somewhere, you know, pink equals pretty. And maybe it's because all the models are white, or, you know, all the movie stars that I was shown were white.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we can talk about how representation matters, but, you know, that was something that was taught to me sort of subconsciously, and I parroted like it was a fact.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that that sort of influences a lot of things in my life that I'm not even aware of.
Don't beat yourself
I
up.
mean,
That happens to everyone the world over. There have been studies. I don't know if you've heard of something called doll test. But after we finish,
yes, yeah.
go take a look at it on YouTube. Everyone can go the doll test. It's been done with children 4 years old and I think below, maybe 3 or 4 years old, the world over, and children of all races. And they present dolls to them, black and white dolls, and they ask children invariably which doll is pretty, which doll is smart, which doll do you love, which doll, you know, is kind and nice and good. And they always pick the white doll for the pretty, nice, kind, good doll, and the black doll is the, you know, the doll that's they just don't like and they don't want to play with. So that it happens to kids even who are also racialized. So don't beat yourself up. It's, we've all internalized this system of white supremacy. And I always tell that to even my clients that are coming to work with me, that, you know, this isn't about, you know, white people learning and undoing. It's really about everybody, right? Because we're all part of these systems that oppress and disenfranchise and tell us what's good and evil. And it's in our media, it's in our movies, it's in our books, it's in everything that we've ever known. So yeah, how can we
And
go ahead,
sorry, go ahead.
how can we now undo all of that? It can't be done overnight. Like I was just going to say, it has to be like a slow systemic process to undo all of these things. What were you going to say?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, what now do we do? Like, what are the actions that we take? And I think that representation is really important. You know, every once in a while I'll see some posts on LinkedIn about celebrating like the first Black woman to do this, and of course like enter in all these white people saying like, why is her race important? And it's like, you know, it's important because she's the first one, you know, like we don't celebrate the first white guy to do this because there's been tons, you know, like it's the old hat now, and we need to recognize and celebrate people that are doing things differently, you know. And it's also just recognizing the fact that her journey to getting to that position is very different from a white man's journey getting to that position, and being able to celebrate the fact that she overcame other barriers that maybe this guy didn't. And people don't necessarily want to hear that, especially white men, because you know, everyone has their struggles, you know. No one wants to hear like, you didn't work hard to get where you are, you earned it through your skin color and your gender, or you know, the fact that your parents were wealthy or whatever it is. No one wants to hear that, and it's not always necessarily true. It's just also recognizing that everyone has a different path, and bias is real, and we need to understand those things before we can actually do anything meaningful. You know, being colorblind is not the answer.
No, I literally had this conversation with another racialized woman very recently. And it was all about how, you know, she's the preferred minority. I mean, it's really sad and sick that we have to have this conversation, but, you know, you've gotten your job yes, as a racialized woman, you had barriers to overcome, but you are the preferred minority. The fact that you're in this role is almost an example of anti-Blackness and tokenism and colorism and all of these things, right? And she hated hearing it, right? It's like, oh, let's talk about something else, Janelle, or I gotta go, you know. And we ended the conversation really quickly, but I felt I had to educate her or inform her that yes, you might have worked hard. Yes, you might have overcome tons of barriers. You're a woman, so certainly there are challenges there. You're not a white cisgender man who's able-bodied. However, you know, when we're talking, you know, racialized people, sometimes we're put against each other. We're pit against each other. Like right now, this whole conversation about anti-Asian racism and anti-Black racism, and you know, because of George Floyd, have we forgotten all the anti-Asian? Nobody's forgotten. You know, we're all allies in this for sure. Human rights is human rights, but we're always having to defend, you know, which minority group is the most oppressed, which minority group is having the worst experiences. It's really so problematic.
And it's just, that's not the problem. Like, the problem isn't which minority group deserves all the attention. The problem is that white people have had all the attention for so long, and it's time to disperse that. We need to help everyone out, which is, like, that's hard. Just let's fix all the problems and they'll all be better. That's so easy to say. But just focusing on one thing doesn't mean that we can't focus on another. And further, giving attention to anti-Black racism doesn't diminish your whiteness, or it doesn't mean that there are less opportunities for you as a white person. I've seen a lot of people that think, and I've heard this quote a lot, and it's a great one, but when you have privilege, equality looks like oppression.
Yes.
And that's just, it's so potent. And I think, when we're used to, I don't know, and it's not even that we want to be brought down to the level of that kind of racism. I don't want to have to fear for my life every time I'm pulled over from a cop. I just want other people not to have to. And that's not an equal sum thing, like, no one should have to fear for their life when a cop pulls them over. And there, if this person doesn't have to, that doesn't mean this person has to. There are a lot of things that aren't going to be divvied up. We're not slicing a pie here. There's enough for everyone. And I think white people need to, I guess, just get over the fact that we have privilege and other people deserve that too. And to give that out doesn't mean that we're going to diminish our own privilege. If anything, it just makes the world a better place.
Yeah, I have this woman, she's like harassing me right now on my feed. She's like going, and I'm not even answering her. It's so funny. She's like tagging me and calling me out, and we don't have privilege, she says, and I just don't have the energy to like explain it. Usually I would give her like the white privilege white paper from Peggy McIntosh and say, go have a read. And a lot of people, they actually click, they read, and they learn, and they see the very nice itemized list of all the ways in which whites have privilege, and they're like, oh, they come back and they learn something. But I just feel like this person is so close, they're not even going to click the link, they're not going to learn anything. They're one of those that are just really like on their high horse and blah blah blahing right now, and I don't have the energy for it. So I'm just like, but it's such an important thing that people they recognize, right, that there are, they were like, she's like, one of the things she said was, it's a privilege to live in the United States. We all have that privilege, right? Where it's a privilege to just have a job. We all have that. It's not race related, but there are certain privileges that are race related, right? Whiteness affords certain opportunities that just doesn't exist for Blackness or other ethnicities. So just how do we get people, Sara, how do we get them all to understand and not to just dismiss it? Like, she's so closed that I'm just like, sometimes I have the energy to like undo and educate, and then other times I have to really reserve my energy and just focus on other things and not that depleting stuff. But how do we do this? Because it's important work. Like, I feel like I'm gonna have to go back and address her when I feel that rant, and I can be that keyboard warrior, but I don't always have that. So what do we do? What does somebody like you say to someone like her, even on a thread where it's not like person to person?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much harder on a thread. Like, I've tried to, especially when you're, I don't know, something I heard lately was, praise publicly, criticize privately. And I think people react to that a little bit better. So I've been trying to take some of these harder discussions into a private message. And, I also think it's important. I was on some thread earlier, and someone was like, it's just a troll, like, don't waste your energy. And it's not necessarily that I'm trying to convince that person on this public forum. I just want there to be a dissenting opinion.
Yeah.
So if someone who's, maybe not decided yet won't read through and then see that person's post and say, that's a good point, and then have there be nothing after it to, change their opinion or make them think a little bit deeper about that. I want there to be both sides. So if someone else is maybe a little bit more willing to change their mind, they can see those things. Of course, if someone is, I don't know, being racist and they seem like they might be open to having a conversation, you know, I try to take it into a private message so that we can have a little bit more of a, I don't know, down and dirty conversation where they don't feel as publicly judged and they can really get stuff out, and I can too. And, you know, of course, everything that we say online is public in a way, you know, that stuff can be screenshotted and shared to your employer and whatever, you know, so I'm never afraid of that. I don't think that I would be fired over anything I say, and I sort of try to conduct myself in that kind of way where, you know, if you know, my husband or my parents or my boss saw this, would they think of me any differently or, you know, any less of me, and try to conduct myself in that way. But yeah, sometimes it's not about convincing that one person. Sometimes it's about convincing other people that are looking on. That said, you know, you shouldn't have to deal with that person. I don't know, like there are people like me and, you know, Jonathan's group and all of these people who are here to sort of talk to a white person on white person, and try to, I don't know, alleviate some of that pressure on you as a Black woman to convince every racist that white supremacy is real. Like, you know, it's that shouldn't be your job necessarily. And sometimes you have to pick your battles, and sometimes you have to delegate. You know, like
totally picking my battles. Like it's in one of those posts, and I don't know, it wasn't even my post. I made a comment under a post. It has over like 150 likes, okay? And then there's this long thread with all this stuff that's not even related to my post at all, about race and ethnicity and white privilege, and it's devolving. And then there's of course Black people who are responding, and then she's calling them out and she's calling me out, and I'm like, I'm not even engaged. I really just want the thread to stop, because it's a beautiful post and it's really detracting from what the original poster posted about. And I feel like, okay, I have to address it, but I don't have the energy for that, you know, 60 something person thread. I'm like, oh, I'll go in eventually and just try to diffuse it. Like you said, I do turn into a keyboard warrior sometimes, but I do it, like you said, for a purpose. Like I'm making sure it is educating, even if it's not that one person, like you said, others are watching, others can actually learn from it. And I do try to conduct myself so that if, you know, I do need to work with somebody again one day, hopefully never, they can turn to, you know, and see that my commentary with pride and not disgust, right? It's really important. So anyway, what's next for you, Sarah? What are you planning to do? Because you seem like, you know, you're really about the work now, and you've learned quite a bit. I've watched your engagement over the platform, and we're like, oh, she's gonna be good on my show. So what are you gonna be doing to make sure that the learnings that you've received, you impart them in your lives, in your life, to other people that you work with? And, you know, bring it to your workplace, of course.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm super lucky in that, you know, I don't have a lot of direct family that I need to have this conversation with. Like a lot of them are pretty woke already, you know. There's no problematic people in my family that I need to like sit down and have a conversation with, or, you know, call them out during a family gathering. You know, I don't have any of that at work. You know, I'm part of this small little group of anti-racist activists, and, you know, we have our own little like Yammer group, and occasionally, you know, we'll post different like resources or like a link to a video or something. I'm not sure if I'm going to share the link to this video because I'm like kind of embarrassed, but I might, I don't know. But, you know, my company is doing a lot of great work internally without, you know, my help, but I want to be there to support it. If I hear any of, you know, my white or non-Black or even Black coworkers who are disparaging it, I want to speak up. I think, and I have this problem too, where I think a lot of people think they have to be all or nothing. Like this isn't my job. My job isn't to be an active anti-racist, you know, but it's important work that I fit in when I have time. And I think, you know, a lot of people think, you know, like, oh, I can't do this as a full-time job, you know, and then they just give it up. But it's like exercising, you know, like running for a mile is better than it's not as good as maybe like running for 3 miles. That's probably better exercise, but it's better than nothing. And that's always been, when I get really, really busy, sometimes things go on hold, but I'll come right back to it because it's better than nothing. And everyone has to prioritize. And my dog's been sick, and I've had to spend a lot of time helping her with that, and I haven't had as much time to like be a keyboard warrior on LinkedIn, or maybe educate myself as much as I should be. But it's okay, because that's life. And I want to encourage other white people, to, you don't have to be perfect. I'm not perfect.
Yeah,
I make mistakes all the time. I'm not doing as much as you, or maybe a lot of the other people that you have on this platform. But it's important to do something. And whether that's, like maybe calling someone in when you see racism at work, or using your whiteness to diffuse a situation that you see that might be elevating to being dangerous, or whether that's just educating yourself and trying to eliminate some of those microaggressions that you might be doing without even thinking about them, that's good. That's a good step forward. You don't have to save the world to make an impact. So, I do want to continue this work. I want to be better. I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to do what I can to help, but with the understanding that, sometimes I don't have the energy either. Sometimes I have other things I need to attend to, and that's okay. That's okay, as long as I don't give up, as long as I don't stop forever, as long as I'm still, engaged and willing to step in when needed.
Well, that's the thing about wokeness, right? It's not that you're in this perpetual state of, vigilance. It's just you're woke enough to activate it when you need it. So
right.
What you said is perfectly said, that everybody has a very, very important and even small role to play. And if we all stay vigilant for those moments where we see racism or experience racism, and we use our energy wisely to either call it out or diffuse it, or not, to just, like I said, maybe not calling it out is using your energy wisely, then we use that energy for something else later down the road. And I think that is an important conversation, because too many people are afraid to get involved, because they think that they have to stay in this like perpetually angry state. Like, no one wants you to be like woke and angry, but it's just, you're woke enough to use your knowledge about this stuff when it hits you, or when you see it, and just, in smart ways, right? In strategic ways to make the world better. So I thank you so much, Sara. You are a brilliant guest. I absolutely loved having you on. I do hope you share it with your friends and family and coworkers. And I would love to have you as a guest on a future show. So I would encourage everybody again to hit the like and share and subscribe button. I would love to hear your comments about this video and see what you think. And we'll see you next time on another episode. Thank you for being my guest. And if they need to reach you, Sara, they can reach you on LinkedIn at Sara Herrmann. That's Sara without an H, and Herrmann with 2 R's and 2 N's. Sara Herrmann.
Good luck, everybody.
The German way. I'll see
Yes.
you next time. Thanks again for being a guest, Sara.
Thanks, Janelle. Talk to you later.
Bye.